Good afternoon, everybody. Pastor Rick here, Broadman Baptist Church, and this is the Broadman Word for March 8th, 2021. What an amazing time we're having. Looks like it's going to be an incredibly warm week for us. A little preview into spring. We leap forward in time an hour and get a little bit more daylight. This is a time of change. Time of change in our country, too. A lot going on. There's lots for us to think about, and a lot of Christians wondering, where their place is in all this. And I wanted to talk to you today about intercessory prayer from chapter 9 of Daniel. Where we find ourselves is towards the end of the 70 years of exile in Babylon, and Daniel realizing that this time of exile was coming to an end, and he needed to start petitioning God for what would happen to the nation of Israel when this time was completed. And so for us, we need to take the long view in this situation. God's not going anywhere. Christianity's not going anywhere. We need to be strong. We need to have the courage of Joshua and Daniel and speak and act out of love and in accordance with what God would have us do. But mostly we need to pray, and not only just pray for the nation, but pray for others. It's called intercessory prayer, where we, on behalf of others, take upon ourselves that we should petition God for results in someone else's life. Oswald Chambers, a renowned biblical teacher, Bible study teacher, emphasized praying for someone else. He characterized intercession as putting yourself in God's place, having His mind and perspective on the situation. It's praying for others in light of what we should know about God and His will and His love for us. So it's not that we want to elevate ourselves to the level of God. That's not what Oswald's talking about. He's talking about taking on the mindset of God in the lives of all of us, and then putting yourself out there in prayer, petitioning. In Daniel chapter 9, we have an excellent example of intercessory prayer. The prophet Daniel understood that God's troubling promise of the Jews would have 70 years of captivity in Babylon, but it was coming to an end. And realizing this, Daniel went into full-on prayer mode. He referenced God's commands. He referenced humbling himself, honoring God's character. He confessed his sin, and he depended on His mercy, God's mercy, and then prayed for His people. And he got, fortunately, an immediate answer. We're not going to always immediately receive an answer when we pray to God, but we have a very classic structure of prayer here that we can follow. Look at what Daniel did. He started off referencing God's command, so acknowledging God's authority, acknowledging God's role in the situation. Then Daniel humbled himself, brought himself before God in a humbled state, sort of coming to God as His humble servant, not in any sort of authoritative or demanding way. Then he honored God's character by acting in the way that God prescribed and coming to Him in earnest prayer. Daniel then confessed his sin. And then he depended on God's mercy, asking for it, and not on his behalf, but for his people. And in this way, he intercessed for his nation, the nation Israel, to receive God's worthy will and God's grace in being returned to their nation. So not all prayer is going to end with the dramatic response that Daniel got, but we can be encouraged that God, on behalf of others, will act when we come to him in trust and dependence on him. It's really a honoring thing that we can do when we pray intercessory prayer for others. So in this time where we find ourselves frustrated with so much going on, so much distraction, so much noise, so much division, we should perhaps, instead of focusing on that, focus on our role as Christians. Take the long view, understanding who God is and what God can do, and then try to change things with intercessory prayer. Letting God be God, letting us assume our role in the situation, and then being at peace with God's provision, however it might come. In this way, we can bring about real lasting change, and we can honor our Christian heritage and honor God by being real change agents, by being real forces in the kingdom, because we prayed. Like Daniel prayed for his nation, we can pray for ours. I encourage you to take some time to do that today. Hey, listen, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.